Hey everyone, welcome back to Staying Connected. This is Katie, your host, and today I have Chrystal with me. Hey Chrystal.
Hi, how are you, Katie?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So, you've agreed to talk to us about your story with Vascular Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, and I'm super excited to talk to you. I've heard awesome things.
hmm
um, so, how old are you?
I am 39.
And how long have you known that you have vEDS?
I have known since 1997 approximately.
Are you the only one in your family?
No, my mother and my brother also had vascular EDS.
Can you tell me about them?
I certainly can. My mother, Carolyn is her name, she found out in 1994 that she had EDS as a result of not being able to move her arms one day when she came home from work, and she went to the hospital. They ran several tests and were unable to figure out exactly what was wrong with her. And they, out of boredom, after being in the emergency room for several hours, I decided to show one of the doctors a very neat trick of moving my fingers backwards. And at that time, we thought it was called double jointed. And the doctor inquisitively asked me, was my mother able to do the same? And I said, of course she could do the same. And I said, my brother can do it too. You want me to show you? And he was like, no. And he asked me some other questions and went back and did some research. And he discovered from previous education through medical school that she had vascular EDS. So he thought she was tested and it came back positive. She had, at that time, 2 blood clots in her forearm, 1 in each arm, and she also had 1 in each leg.
Wow.
Yeah.
What were those blood clots from?
They really don't know. She just went to work one day and was fine and came home, and she just was unable to move her hands. It was really strange that they were both located in the same area in both arms. One was much bigger than the other one, but they had to remove them both so that she could continue to have the usage of her arms.
Wow. And so what led them to think vascular type? Do you
At
know?
that time, we weren't really aware of Ehlers-Danlos, so they took a biopsy from her and they took it to a lab, and when they came back, that is, I'm not sure how they test that, but that's the diagnosis that they gave her. And I know that they asked her some leading questions about family history, and she told them that her grandmother had suffered from a aneurysm in her head that she passed away from, and my mother's brother was believed to also have had EDS. They didn't know at the time, but he also had blood clots in his arms, and eventually he passed away from those as well. He had them in his both arms and in his chest.
Wow. So what about your brother?
My brother was diagnosed about 1997, same time I was. He used to play a lot of sports, and when he was in high school, he had a blood clot in his leg. He was young, so they did the surgery. They didn't know he had it, removed it, no big deal. But then in his early 20s, well, I should say late 20s, he went to a restaurant and thought he had food poisoning from the restaurant. He went to the emergency room and they did some tests on him and found that he had several holes in his intestines. And they took out a part of his intestines, put them back together, and put a colostomy bag in the middle. And he was very sick for a while, but he was able to recover from it. And it took some time, but he got back to normal. Unfortunately, he suffered another bowel rupture 2 years ago in October 2016, and he had about 8 holes in his intestines.
Wow.
He was rushed to the hospital, and they were unable to repair the holes. They described it as exploding within faster than they could repair it. And so he was taken over by that, and he perished. He did not make it. He was 40 years old.
Wow. And your mom passed away from a bowel rupture as well?
Yes, my mother passed away just 11 months after my brother. She also suffered a bowel perforation that they attempted to repair, and they were unable to repair it. The thought process was if they could get to it to repair it, her skin was so thin that there was no way for them to close her after the surgery. The tissues around the area that they needed to get to, they describe as friable, cotton candy like, and they just could never get to the affected area to repair it without damaging the tissues around it, and they were unable to close her back. So she also perished. She was 68.
Wow. So have you also had bowel complications, or what kind of complications have you had?
I have not, thank God, suffered any bowel perforations or any issues with my bowels at this time. I did suffer a uterine rupture upon the birth of my daughter in 2012 that led me to have 3 surgeries and 9 blood transfusions. I was in ICU for an entire week, and I didn't see my daughter until she was 3 days old, and that was by way of a picture. And then I eventually saw her when she was about 5 days old. They let me hold her for a little while. But I did survive that, thank goodness. And now I
usually... Tell me more about that story.
Well, I found out that I was pregnant with her. I found out before her. I had a miscarriage before her, and within 2 months I was pregnant again. And I went to Johns Hopkins and spoke to the specialist there, and they did not think it was in my best interest with my age. I was 30. They did not think with my age and with vascular EDS that it was a good idea for me to carry on with the pregnancy. They told me that I would most likely not make it through the delivery and or the pregnancy itself. But with discussion with my husband and just my faith in God, I decided that I no longer wanted to discuss the negativity. I advised the doctors and the nurses at that time was the last discussion I wanted to have, and I just wanted to move forward with a healthy pregnancy, and whatever it took for that to come to light, that's what I was going to do. And I took every precaution, went to every appointment. I ate whatever they told me to eat, and I did whatever they told me to do to ensure that she was healthy and that I was too. And my goal was really for her to make it safe and healthy here. After that, I wasn't as much concerned with myself. I was more concerned with her. And once she was born on her due date, they induced my labor on her due date, and after she came out, she cried, and I was good to go. I said, God, whatever you do now, it's up to you. And I started to feel the pain, like it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. Thought I was having a heart attack. And they told me later on that my uterus had ruptured, and I was losing a lot of blood, and that was the weight that I was feeling.
Wow. That's insane. To make it, so you made it through the entire delivery, and then it happened?
Yes.
And what did they do after that?
To repair the rupture, the first surgery that I had, they put a balloon-like apparatus to stop the bleeding. And I woke up in ICU, and I just didn't feel right. And they came in to check me, and it was, I was all connected to tubes and everything. I couldn't talk, but I could kind of gesture that something wasn't right. And they noticed that I bled around the balloon. So they took me back into surgery again, and they put in like a mesh type gauze there to stop the bleeding. And then they, sewed me up. And then that apparently stopped. It allowed my tissues and everything to start to repair themselves. And like 2 days later, they went back in and took that out. And from that point on, the body just started to heal itself. And I stayed in the hospital for a while. And I was told they had to move some things around down there just
That's such a
to,
weird
to
thing to
keep me
hear.
alive. And so actually I did get discharged from the hospital, and I came home, and a day or so later I ended up going back because I guess the way that I was digesting food and disposing of the food wasn't normal for me. It wasn't the normal way that you use the bathroom for me.
Okay.
And so, I ended up going back, and they just basically told me with, EDS, you can clot a lot. And that's what was happening. The body was creating clots of its own to kind of repair itself.
Oh.
So it was just getting used to that. But eventually that went away.
Okay. That's so interesting. They just move, like when you say that they just move things around down there. That's such a weird thought.
I asked the doctor why didn't they, make it so that give me like a hysterectomy or make it so I couldn't have any more kids. He said, "Miss, we were just trying to save your life at that point." I said, "Okay, I understand. I'll take it.
Priorities.
Right.
So that was in 2012, you said?
Yes.
So your daughter is 6 now?
Yes. She's a blushing, active 6-year-old.
That's awesome. What is her name?
Faith.
Aw. Faith. So she made it through the surgery through the delivery just fine then?
Yes, she was
The
fine.
problem. And has she had any problems? Do you know if she has vEDS?
We have had her tested, and we've also had my brother's daughter tested. They were both, we were told that neither one of them have it. So we are excited about that.
That's great.
Yes.
That's so great. That's like it's a 50-50 chance, I think, right?
Yes, it is.
That is so great. So you're the last one in your family.
Yeah, I'm the last one.
What has this experience with everything been like for you?
I would be remiss if I didn't say it was scary. It is very scary. It is scary on a daily basis. It's scary on an hourly basis because for my brother and I, we knew of the odds of the age. But because my mother was 68, we thought that, oh, well, she made it to 68, we surely can make it with all the technology and healthier ways of eating and things of that nature. So we kind of like put it on the back burner. It wasn't really, on the forefront for us. And then when my brother unexpectedly passed, I saw him on Monday and he was deceased by Wednesday. That was like a screeching halt for me. And instead of being depressed, where I found myself falling into a depression after losing both my brother and my mother, I decided to take that depression, the energy I was about to waste on being depressed, and turn that into awareness energy. Mm-hmm. And I am self-motivating. I am trying to teach others and make people aware of what's going on, how it can affect you, how you should get tested. So I still struggle day to day because I miss them truly. But I think that the Ehlers Danlos Society and being able to find a support group of individuals like myself who struggle with it has been a blessing to me because it gives me that motivation to continue on. Mm-hmm. And so where I am scared, I don't let that overcome me or succumb me and take me over. I try to be more positive and just live every day like it's my last. Make it the best from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. I tell my daughter all day, every day, I love her. I spend as much time with her and my husband as I can. and I just smiled through it.
That's amazing. To take that kind of experience and turn it around and make it a awareness raising positive spin on things, you know.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed when you were younger, when your mom was diagnosed, right?
Yes.
And then that whole period of time between when you were diagnosed as a kid and when you had faith, did were you like pretty much symptom free?
Um, I was major symptom free, but we always knew about the thin skin, the easy tearing, the easy bruising, or bruising didn't know where it came from. Or as a kid, I used to sit on the counter and I would jump off the counter and I would always get this big vein pop out the bottom of my foot. Um, I knew about things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't necessarily know that that was a result of it. We kind of knew, but didn't really, it wasn't a big deal to us because it was always what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really focus on that a lot.
Well, that's good. That is, I like to look back at things because I didn't find out until I was 27, 28. I just turned 28 when I got the diagnosis. And for me, it was like looking back over all of the things in my life, it just made so much more sense.
Oh, now I'll agree with that. A lot of things make a lot more sense now that I do know. And I wish that my mother and my brother were able to know as much as I know now. Kind of, because for my brother, I kind of admire him because since he didn't know, he really didn't have anything to fear. So for him, he just lived life. He just did a lot of things and there was no fear. Whereas for me, there's still, even though it's in the background, there's still fear. So it's kind of, my husband calls things a blessing and a curse, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to know.
I definitely feel that
Yeah,
100% because I'm like, the more I learn about it, the better. It's almost like the better I feel because I know.
right,
But at the same time, it makes me think about so much more with every decision.
right,
And it's like I'm
absolutely.
like in a constant state of risk analysis.
Yes,
And that can be very stressful.
it can,
Like some
yes,
decisions are very easy, you know, like I'm not going to eat that today, or
right.
I'm not going to do this today, or I shouldn't do that ever. But other things, like, really though, like other things, you just, it
Yeah,
just
I
is
mean,
like on the edge, you know, is it risky or is it not? It's like
right.
it's a hard thing to decide and to sit there and even think about. And that's when I start getting down, as I start thinking about it. And then I'm like, man, the fact that I have to think about this at all
Right.
sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It
It does.
does.
I mean, little things scare me because, like with both of them having bowel preparations, if I feel any little pain in my stomach, I'm like, oh my God, is this it?
Yeah, and I have a lot of like kind of like not very severe bowel issues, but I feel like that's I'm going to,
Right.
if that makes sense. So I'm
Yes,
like
it
constantly
definitely
trying
does.
to watch what I eat, but I'm also very much failing because I love cookies. So I'm very much failing there. But I'm always like worried about it now, like overeating and stuff. I'm just
Right.
a lot more cautious
Right.
than I was before.
Yeah.
So what kind of exercise do you do? What kind of activities do you like to do?
I struggled for a while with exercise. There were things that, of course, after I had my daughter, I wanted the flat stomach, and I wanted to do sit-ups and, work out with weights and things. And of course, with EDS and the thin tissues, that's not really an option. I tried to walk every morning, and
Mm-hmm.
then arthritis started to settle in my knee, and that became a challenge. So recently I have joined an aqua aerobics class that I absolutely love. the pool is warm, so that's good for the muscles, to relax the muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And the class that I take is not strenuous. It's kind of at your own pace, so you don't overdo it, and you don't really get as exhausted as you would. And it's still difficult. It's still, that body build up, so you're still getting the exercise. And I only do it once a week, not to overexert myself. But I really like it. And I have a 6-year-old, as you mentioned, so I get a lot of exercise from running around behind her and just keeping up with her and all of her activities. So that's what I do mostly. I try to walk around at work, not too much, but I kind of take it easy, a little arm exercises here and there. But my aqua aerobics class is my saving grace for aerobics and exercise, I think.
So what do you do for work?
I am a systems analyst, so I have like a desk job, so it's really not strenuous at all.
Okay. Yeah, I'm always interested to see what different people do.
Yeah, it's not interesting.
Because we're all different.
I noticed that a lot of individuals I come in contact with through different social media sites and groups that I've joined, that people feel that their doctors are not properly diagnosing them. And when you asked me the question about how we were diagnosed, and I told you about the doctor at the hospital, after that diagnosis, and I went to, just your regular physician, I was passed around a lot because I was told that Ehlers-Danlos is something that they only talk about for about a week in medical school. With all the things that they learn in medical school, EDS is only discussed for about a week. So it's really important for people to educate themselves, because I find myself educating my doctors.
Yes.
As weird as that sounds, sometimes you have to challenge your doctor, even though you feel like, oh, they have this degree sitting on the wall and they should know, and I'm paying them to know. They don't always know. And a lot of them go by what's in the books, the research books, but it's up to those of us patients that have it to rewrite those books. If we don't tell them or tell other people about our symptoms and our experiences, the doctors can only go by what has been written, and who knows who's writing those books. So in order for us to be able to be effective for the future to come, I don't foresee there being a cure while I'm living. But what I can foresee is me being able to make other people aware to help there be a cure for the next generation. I'm paying it forward in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with that.
And it is so true, too, because I find myself, especially in the ER. The ER is where I see it the most because I'm very picky now of which doctors I go to.
Yes.
But the ER, the docs, they'll either disregard the Ehlers-Danlos because they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. Or they'll tell me that all the types are the same. Or they ask me to start. I'm like, oh, I have Vascular Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. And they're like, oh, does that mean you can bend your elbows really far and stuff? And I'm like, well, actually, it means this.
Right. Yes.
I'm not quite as bendy.
You basically have to take a write-up with you to the hospital and say, read this and then come back.
Yeah, and I have an emergency book that has some very good information that UW Medicine, the University of Washington, they have an emergency passport booklet thing, which I have. I find it, I don't ever go anywhere without it. And I have found that some doctors will look at it, but some doctors just won't. They'll just throw it over to the side. But it's got some very useful information in there. And I remember when I first opened it, I was looking at, it has all these blank spots for you to enter information about yourself, right? So your name and all the standard stuff. And then they've got 5 lines for aneurysms and 5 lines for bowel rupture events. And I just remember looking at it and be like, holy crap. This is that's one of the first things I got when I was diagnosed. And it was so intimidating.
Yeah.
But now it's something I just won't go anywhere without.
Right, you have to. You have to be your own research
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's story is different. And it's easy to characterize it as this one disease or syndrome or however they want to characterize it, but everyone is different.
Mm-hmm.
Not one fixed button, push the button and it's fixed. It's different.
Well, it was so good to talk to you.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love talking to other people with this because you get it. You totally get
Yeah,
it.
it's a very good feeling. It's an unfortunate feeling, but it's a very good feeling to talk to someone who, like you said, gets it. And they're not like weirded out by it. They're not like, oh, you're exaggerating. It is
Mm-hmm.
really comforting to know that someone else out there feels the same thing that you feel on a daily basis. They're scared, but you have to continue to live life.
Mm-hmm. Pushing forward.
Pushing forward. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with the listeners?
I just want the listeners to make sure that they spread the awareness amongst as many people as they can. Put it on your social media, talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to people who could care less. Make them hear you. They don't have to care about it, but make them hear you. I want the awareness for EDS to be as big as the awareness is for cancer. Everyone is affected by cancer or knows someone who's been affected by cancer. You're not going to know necessarily someone who's affected by EDS, but that doesn't mean you don't have to know about it. So education is definitely necessary. Awareness is definitely appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can make a difference in just one person's life, if I can make a difference in one person's life, I feel that I have fulfilled my duty here on earth. So when I pass on, I want my family to be able to say she affected at least one person by telling her story.
Well, you've affected me.
Oh,
Thank you so much again. I
you're
really
quite
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you for the privilege and the honor of being on your podcast.
Aw, you're welcome. All right. So, thank you everybody for listening. This was Staying Connected, and this was Chrystal. If you want to be on the podcast, you want to tell me about your story with vEDS, or you just want to reach out and talk to me about your story with vEDS and you don't want to be on a podcast, there are people out here, and we are here. And so, thank you again for listening. New episode out on the last Sunday of every month, and I will talk to you soon.